Back on Open Line, Rory Johnston with you, and our guest tonight is Beth Joslin Roth. I am saying that right?
Yes.
Joslin, Policy Director for Safe Tennessee Project, as we discuss, a very important topic, gun violence, homicide victimization, and so on. We've got a couple of callers on hold. Hang on there just a moment, because I want to touch on something we talked about in the break. The guns in trunks legislation and how it's impacted. Now, we report all the time gun thefts out of vehicles. People leaving their guns in their cars.
Yes.
Which is legal to have your gun in your car.
Yes.
But they're leaving them a lot of times with the car door unlocked.
Yes.
And gun thefts out of vehicles are a big problem. It's on the rise.
It is a big problem, so much so that the TBI has spoken out about it, Metro Police here in Nashville and in Memphis as well. In Memphis alone, there's been a 256% increase in the number of guns stolen out of vehicles since 2013, when that law went into effect. 256%. That's concerning. The police director in Memphis never misses an opportunity to bring up that statistic and to link it with passage of that law, and to criticize lawmakers for not coming in and trying to attach at least some criminal penalty for gun owners who recklessly leave their guns in unlocked cars, leave loaded guns in unlocked cars, and then those guns end up getting stolen.
Right. And has there been any data to trace those guns that have been stolen to specific crimes and homicides?
I have not seen data specific to that. I would imagine that law enforcement probably has that data.
Because if they're registered firearms,
right. Then there should be some record.
Yeah.
But we don't have, the way we keep track of guns is a little, it's a little ambiguous, and so without background checks and things like that, a lot of times guns are traded between people, so it's not always easy to track who the owner is. But the gun thefts out of vehicles really is a concern. In fact, there have already been over 240 guns stolen out of vehicles in Nashville already this year, which is really concerning. It's alarming, frankly, because the people that are stealing these guns out of cars are not stealing them because they want them to, for self-protection in their home. They're using them. They generally end up being used to commit a crime, often an aggravated assault or a homicide.
How often are we hearing that these guns wind up in the hands of teenagers?
Well, that's a real...
Extremely young.
Yes, and that is a real unfortunate trend that we're seeing, and that we've talked to law enforcement about. What happens is that, young people, they know that in Tennessee, a lot of people keep guns in their cars, and they just go around and they just check door handles, and if a door handle is open, they search through the car, they look through they rifle through the car. A lot of times the guns are not even in a lockbox or a glove box, or just out. But then they gain access to those guns, and then they use them. The Belmont graduate, Kyle Yorkitz, who was murdered earlier this year, the young people that took his life, they used a gun that they had stolen out of a car to do so. And I mean, there's a lot of stories like that out there, and it's frustrating. We just need people to be responsible. If they're going to keep a gun in their car, they have to keep it locked up and keep their car locked.
Let's go to the phone lines. On line 2, waiting patiently, is Evan. Hi, Evan. Welcome.
Yes. When I was researching Jim Crow and the civil rights movement for history people, I found the level of discrimination increase the farther southern a state would be. Does the level of black homicides increase the farther south a state is?
Okay. Thank you for the call. He mentioned Jim Crow. I mean, we're getting a little broad there.
I don't have data that goes back that far, but if he's talking about there being a higher number of rate of gun violence in southern states, I mean, there is validity to that. We do see that.
Let's go to Mack on line 1. Hi, Mack. Welcome. Mack, you there?
Yes, sir.
Hi, go ahead.
Hey, my question is, how many, when it says the black homicide, it's not white people shooting black people, it's the black shooting blacks. The racism is going away, but, it keeps being brought back up by other ethnic groups, I think.
So you disagree with David, who called in earlier,
Yeah, because you don't see that. If it was on the news, it'd be blown all over the news. I've never seen that. I haven't seen it in a long time.
All right, we'll listen in.
I disagree.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Matt.
I'm not going to wade into whether or not racism is an issue in our country. I personally believe that it unfortunately still is an issue, but when it comes to gun violence, what we generally see is that most gun violence happens within social networks, which means people who live near each other, who have relationships with each other, are the ones that tend to be violent towards one another.
And what we're talking about here, and this is a quote that from you about the disproportionate impact that homicide has on black men, boys, women, and girls in our state.
Right.
And that is what the public health emergency is.
Yes. Because
it is a big disproportionate impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I would love to come back on at another time and talk about the disproportionate number of firearm suicides that impact the white population, because there's actually more firearm suicides, substantially more of those every year than there are homicides.
And you were saying that is among older white men.
Older white men, yes.
Wow. All right. 737 plus, if you'd like to call in, let's get back to the lines here. Joe is next. Hi, Joe.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, and I just want to kind of get it into the legislation, is I think Tennessee should adopt a law that handguns, if you own a handgun, we should have, just like you do cars, you should register it every year. You should have to register it so that you can't say 5 years from now it's been stolen and blah, 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 blah. I think they should have to register it every year, just like you do cars. I mean, it's that important, I think.
Okay. Are you a gun owner?
I am a gun owner, and I'd like to see the take on that, because I think we should have to register them. If it's a handgun, we should register them every year, just like we do cars.
Sure. All right. Good point. Thank you for calling in, Joe. We appreciate it. Again, 737-7587 is the number. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I will tell you that the word registration will send off all kinds of red flags with the gun lobby.
Why?
That is a real concern that they have. They are fearful that if guns are registered, then the government will create a list of gun owners, and should, I don't know, some type of revolution arise, then they would go to those gun owners and confiscate their guns. That is a concern that they have.
No, seriously though.
That's the concern that they have. I don't agree with that.
Right.
I agree with Evan.
Just as a
I always point out, I mean, the government has drones and tanks and
right.
So that the whole idea of needing to keep guns to fight off a tyrannical government seems a little far-fetched to me.
Yeah.
But you know, Evan does bring up some good points. You know, more accountability, I think, creates more responsibility. But trying to get something like that passed in Tennessee would be impossible.
Yeah. I want to go back to this study. The deaths, this is quoting you again, shatter families, devastate communities, create cycles of trauma. In addition to strengthening our current gun laws, you say we must prioritize investing in community-based prevention programs.
Yes.
Let's define our terms here. Community-based prevention programs. Oh, just hold that up and put it back on that. That's fine.
So that is a broad term, and it's broad for a reason, because it can mean a lot of different things. So a community-based program may mean anything from a group that wants to do after-school programming for students.
Sure.
It could mean a church that wants to host gun buybacks. It could mean a program that works with hospitals to do what we call hospital-based violence interruption programs. It could be for any number of what we would call violence interrupter or violence interruption outreach programs that go into schools and work with young people, try to give them alternative things to do in the afternoon and at night. I read a story recently about a principal in, I believe it was in New Jersey. His high school had a lot of kids that were getting into trouble, a lot of kids that were getting shot, and he started a program where every Friday night they keep the school open until like 10 or 11 o'clock, and they bring different people in from the community. They have kids playing ball, they have kids playing video games, They have women that come in and do makeup for the girls. They have dance parties. And what he's seen is that
They're engaging the kids.
They're engaging the kids.
And they're staying off the streets.
And they're staying off the streets. And what he has seen is that this year, for the first year, in as long as he can remember, he hasn't had a single one of his students be shot. So, you know, that's a program that works. You know, programs where you teach young people who may feel very hopeless, who may feel like they don't really have a lot to look forward to, that with an education or engaging them around something that interests them, whether it's photography or videography or music, that there are things that they can do to make money and to get out of that cycle of violence. You know, just to show them that there is an alternative. So those are the type of community-based programs that we're talking about. And what we would really like to see is our cities invest and allocate funds for those types of programs, and really for the state as a whole to recognize that those types of programs are integral to addressing this issue, especially with young people.
We'll pick up the conversation after another quick break. More of Open Line right after this. Stay with us.